Hey Collective, it's great to be back with you guys, continuing in our daily Devo series, and we're jumping through these letters that Paul has written to different churches, and we've gone through 1st and 2nd Corinthians and Romans, and we are in Galatians now, one of my favorite books. And there's so much information, so many good things in the book of Galatians. This is Paul's letter to the church in Galatia. So we're in chapter 1 already, kicking it off in verse 11, and I want to read through a little bit of this for you guys so that you can understand what Paul was going through in his earlier life, where Paul is at now, and what he does in response to encountering God. And so Paul says here in verse 13, "For you have heard of my previous way of life in Judaism." Paul was a Jew before, and this is what Paul did. Paul says, "How intensely I persecuted the church of God and tried to destroy it. I was advancing in Judaism beyond many of my own people, my own age, and I was extremely zealous for the traditions of my fathers." And then this is where it gets interesting. "But when God, who set me apart from my mother's womb and called me by his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son in me so that I might preach him to the Gentiles." So Paul is saying God was pleased enough in Paul to reveal himself so that Paul could use that zealous fire that he had in his heart that he was using to persecute the church. He could use that to stop persecuting the church and start building the church. And that's what Paul did. He said, my immediate response wasn't to go and consult the apostles that were before me. My immediate response was to go into the world and start preaching it, start living it out. So Paul says, I went to Arabia, and then I went to Damascus, and then after I went to Jerusalem to get acquainted with Cephas, and then the other apostles, and then James, and the brother of Jesus. Like all of these things Paul does after he comes face to face with Jesus on the road to Damascus. It's incredible. It's crazy stuff. And so also continuing in this series, we've been jumping back and forth between New Testament and Old Testament, and I want you guys to just read through the whole chapter of Psalm 136. I remember whenever I was back in college in Joplin, Missouri, I had a professor who we would be reading through the Psalms, and we read through this in a very specific way often, where the professor would read the first part and then we would read the response. And so I want you guys to do that. I want you to read out loud all of chapter 136, all of Psalm 136. Read out loud. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. And then pray in your mind, his love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods, his love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of lords, his love endures forever. Do that all the way throughout. And I would say, do it often. Do it every day if you have the chance, if you have the opportunity. Because all of these things are true. And all of these things are what Paul recognized and what Paul believed. And then whenever he recognized that in Jesus, he started living it out. He started going into the world and preaching the gospel. So I hope you guys can have a little bit of that in your life this morning and this week. And we'll see you again tomorrow for another Daily Devo.